Happy day one of e-tail. I'm Sarah Cascone, and as the head of marketing at Bluecore, I've had the privilege over the past 5 years to have worked with some of the most innovative brand executives in the space. And at Bluecore, we live and breathe solving for retail technology problems with 400 of the world's fastest growing brands. But today, I'm here to talk to you about this D2C phenomena. And I don't mean the digitally native brands like Warby Parker and Glossier that we commonly refer to as D2C. I mean the approach of going direct to consumer, that coveted one-to-one experience. Now, this approach is partly fueled by the aforementioned brands who grew up in this manner online, but it is also fueled by three key shifts in the industry that I'm going to talk to you about. These shifts are leading to rapid growth, or even lack thereof, for both digitally native and traditional brands alike. Jockey is an example of a traditional brand who is addressing these shifts and embracing a D2C approach for growth. So let's dig in. The direct-to-consumer movement is a result of this new consumer. With the emergence of what Forrester has dubbed the hyper-adoptive consumer, which are consumers adopting products and experiences much more rapidly than before, and this transition to D2C, we see a need for a subsequent transformation in the underlying marketing technology that we build and you choose to operate on. And if we look back at how technology has evolved over time, we can see where it needs to be for this new consumer. Consumer 1.0 was the age of mass marketing. Acxiom has its origins here back to 1969 when it was known as Demographics, Inc., and eventually became one of the largest commercial databases of consumers. Epsilon was founded in the same year, and between the two, they seeded a lot of the work behind mass advertising through data. Consumer 2.0 involved taking the targeting concepts from the offline 1.0 world and applying them to digital. Major advances in three categories came about during this era. The first was the DMP for anonymous audience targeting through display. The second was audience and campaign management systems like Teradata and Unica that manage first party. And finally, there were the high-scale messaging systems like ExactTarget and Responses. For the most part, this is the large majority of what most retailers operate on today. Now enters the age of Consumer 3.0, and there is a need for technology that supports a direct-to-consumer approach. Now, the general direct-to-consumer ethos, as exemplified by these new digitally native brands, simply surrounds finding new avenues to be closer to the consumer, whether that's digitally, through direct mail and billboards, or even through pop-up stores. We see brands like Nordstrom, for example, who are shifting and investing heavily in going direct to consumer. And we see that in their partnerships with brands like Away and Glossier. Then we have brands like Cabela's, Foot Locker, and Sephora, who are all finding new inroads to be closer to the consumer and their preferences. In short, every business, at least in part, is becoming a direct-to-consumer business. And there is a need for a technological foundation to support that. Which leads me to shift number 2. Because brands are trying their damnedest to attract this 3.0 hyper-adoptive consumer on a 2.0 foundation, one of the major implications is what we call the retention death spiral. When consumers are ever fleeting, demand convenience, and have a ton of choice, we see a decline in repeat purchases. Typically, less than 10% of first purchasers buy a second time. This is compounded by a much longer purchase path. It takes consumers twice as long to buy the same product as 5 years ago, and return rates are higher than ever. This lends itself to the perpetual promotion cycle where we flood inboxes with coupons and discounts, further putting marketing, responsible for driving traffic and loyalty, and merchandising, responsible for pushing product and managing inventory, at odds, trying to acquire, cross-sell, and upsell, all while managing retail margins. The retention death spiral wasn't as much of an issue in the first wave of direct-to-consumer when all of these new digitally native brands came on the scene, because acquiring a customer was easy. But that's not true anymore. If you look at the top 5 concerns for retailers heading into the holidays, number 1 is the rising cost of ad spend amongst customer service, inventory, shipping, and even returns. Now, that's not entirely surprising considering the average cost of a Facebook ad has gone up 14x in 7 years. And because of the way marketing orgs are structured, they're just not able to recover. If you look at a consumer's path to purchase, the data and marketing surrounding that journey sits on top of a variety of systems divided between marketing, merchandising, and e-commerce. For the brands in the room, raise your hand if this sounds familiar, which obviously adds to the complexity in delivering a personalized experience. In a recent study by Forrester of CMOs and CIOs, this was starkly reinforced, with customers struggling to meet their most important objectives around customer centricity. 70% said they are not effective at driving seamless omnichannel experiences. And 88% said they're not effective at delivering personalization. That is shocking. But this isn't just a marketing merch e-com issue. IT plays a key role across all of it, with retailers struggling with data management and organizational silos, leading to scattered accountability and ownership for these very important business objectives and long wait times for the tasks supporting them, like integrations, campaign requests, etc. This same survey found that the tech stacks meant to empower teams are actually hindering their growth. Only 35% of marketing and IT leaders say their tech stack is helping improve the customer experience. In light of these shifts, the most transformative brands are making changes to embody this direct-to-consumer approach. And that's because the direct-to-consumer approach is a key lever for growth. Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't just another industry buzzword. Retailers tapping into a D2C strategy see a 5-to-1 ROI on channel spend, compared to 2-to-1 for those who are not. They also see a second purchase rate that is double, at 32%, and the customer lifetime value rate grows to 30% when those without a direct-to-consumer strategy actually see a reduction anywhere from 5 to 15%. Now, a real-life example of this kind of growth is with Jockey. Now, Jockey aims to develop a relationship with their customer around their brand and product and nurture them down the path to purchase. If at the very end, that customer has a preference as to where they'd like to transact, whether that's direct or through partners, Jockey supports that, as long as the customer is choosing Jockey. With a direct-to-consumer approach, Jockey has the highest resolution of data, so they can use it strategically to benefit all channels. Now, Jockey's ultimate goal wasn't to drive a direct-to-consumer experience. In order to remain relevant and thrive with long-term sustainable growth, their goal was to increase lifetime value and retention. And the how was through a direct-to-consumer approach. In this scenario, the strategy was to predict what Jockey customers would want to buy next in order to encourage that super valuable repeat purchase through email. Interestingly, the Jockey team thought this product would be underwear for most of their customers, but the insights revealed that t-shirts were actually driving better margins and were what customers were willing to come back for time and time again. So once Jockey was able to determine the capabilities necessary to surface those products to the right customers, they made the tech changes to be able to accommodate that. The capabilities were, 1, to identify and unify customer, behavior, and product data in real time so that they could use their affinity data anywhere. Make quick decisions on who to send what and when, and continuously learn to sharpen those experiences on the fly. And finally, execute in the form of campaigns in minutes to respond to that new consumer appropriately and also free up their team to focus on other conversion opportunities. In Q2 2019, Jockey launched over 1 million behavioral triggers and close to 4 million additional campaigns. 100% of those were personalized, meaning every single message was completely unique to the individual in content, in recommendations, in offers, leading to a 45% increase in email revenue. Now, this is just the start for Jockey. With the introduction of modern tech into their stack, they were able to see insights that even influenced how they stock their warehouse. They were able to understand what products help sell other products and what products could generate signal to help them better understand their customer. Ultimately, the level of success that Jockey achieved demanded a certain capacity for change. This was to ensure that all channels, including wholesale, were operating like a well-oiled machine. And at the end of the day for Jockey, doing nothing and staying with the status quo was much riskier than doing something and making a change. Jockey recognized the new consumer. They embraced this hyper-adoptive customer. They also realized that the way they were operating as a team wasn't totally aligned to the core objectives they were driving towards, like driving repeat purchases, preserving margins, lowering the cost of acquisition. So they made changes. And finally, they took a hard look at what their tech stack could accomplish and what capabilities were necessary to get closer to that consumer. And in this scenario, they replaced legacy tech that was on their stack for years with modern technology built to achieve their business objectives. What you need to think about is, with the retail industry being more competitive than ever and consumer demand only increasing, can you afford to exist as though we're still in the age of Consumer 2.0? Thank you so much for your time, and I'd love to continue the conversation with you at the Blue Core booth.